Welcome to the Beyond Pain podcast with your host, Joe Gambino and Joe LaVacca. Join the two Joes, two physical therapists, as they discuss how to navigate the uncertainties of pain so you can move beyond it and get back to the activities you love most. This podcast is for Joe, and their guests to share their clinical thoughts and ideas based on their collective clinical experiences. Can this information be for you? Maybe, but we cannot know for sure. Therefore, it is always worth talking to your healthcare provider to make the best decisions in your care before you implement anything on this podcast. And please use common sense. Welcome back into the Beyond Pain podcast. I am one of your hosts, Joe Gambino, and I'm here with the other half of the show, Joe LaVacca. You can find us on Instagram at Joe Gambino DPT for myself, at Strength and Motion _PT for Mr. LaVacca over there, Dr. LaVacca over there. Podcast is on YouTube, Cups of Joe _PT, and on Instagram as well, Beyond Pain Podcast. And there's an application form and all of our handles down in the show notes. So if you are looking to have a deeper conversation with us, please feel free to reach out to us. We will get back to you. Joe, welcome back. Didn't mess this one up.
Good to be back. Yeah, we're now riding the streak of one for the Joe Gambino intros. So I feel like we should have a sign behind me now, like
that'd be fun.
Streak of Joe's intros going well. We'll just put a number one there. Hopefully next week we get to 2. But yeah, good to be back. Good to be back. Last week we talked a lot about political ranting and things that were in the news, and this has been in the news. I think what our topic is going to be today, just not recently, but I will let you segue after that cliffhanger.
Yes. So this is a kind of a question of the day type of episode from me to you. And we'll just let it spark a debate. I've had a couple instances where people have ACL injuries. They have not had surgeries yet. They have gone to their doctors. In both cases, the doctors were surprised that they even had an ACL tear based on how their function is, their range of motion, how much extension they have, how much strength they have, what they've been complaining about. But one of them is actually ACL tear with also a little tibial fracture, and the other one is just a pure ACL tear. But both cases, the doctors talked about options as far as one being surgical and one being non-surgical. And I think these non-surgical options are becoming a little bit more common as far as options for people. We're also seeing them with Achilles fractures where it used to always be a surgery, and now you have the option of not doing the surgery versus doing the surgery. So the question really is how much of these have you seen? Are you familiar with any literature out there that talks about, how these do long term? And yeah, how can people start to make some of these decisions for themselves if they do find themselves down this path?
Yeah, it's exciting to hear that people are at least getting options. When I first heard about the non-surgical ideas for Achilles, it was probably pretty early on in my career. I still remember working at my first job and seeing an Achilles rupture and this gentleman being offered that same process. Now, 10 or 15 years ago, that was pretty new. It was just emerging. And ever since I left that inpatient orthopedic realm, I'm sorry, in-network rather than inpatient. So the in-network orthopedic realm, I was seeing surgeries left and right. The thing with them not gaining popularity, non-surgical route, or a surgeon not wanting to probably offer non-surgical treatment to their clients, I didn't really see any non-surgical Achilles. And really up until recently, the non-surgical ACL, I think what we were classifying people as, if you remember, were copers and non-copers with their ACL injury. But what has emerged recently is this idea of this cross-bracing protocol. And that seems to be the way that most people recover from this non-surgical route. So it is important to think that when you are making this decision as a client, it's not like you're just living your life waiting for your ACL or your Achilles to heal. If you go the non-surgical route, Achilles way, you're going to be in a boot with your heel kind of really elevated. And then over the course of a few weeks, you're going to let your heel sort of kind of drop back down to more of a neutral position. So the idea for people watching, you're trying to shorten the tissue that has been damaged in order to bring a lot of these connective tissues back together, make it easier to repair, and then gradually expose load. It's the same thing with the ACL. So you're actually braced at 90 degrees, kind of walking around like a pirate for several weeks, and then gradually let yourself kind of get back to full extension. So the protocol is still going to affect your life no matter what. I would say your personal decision making, what you want to get back to, how old you are, how healthy you are all going to be really big factors. So if you're younger and you have no previous injuries, if you're not smoking, if you're not overweight, if you don't have cholesterol and other issues like blood pressure and things like that, then you could probably do very well from a surgery and be very happy with your outcome. Like we've mentioned before, though, surgery in and of itself is a trauma. So if you're a little bit older, if you have a history of injuries, if maybe you're a little bit more overweight, if you smoke and drink and partake in other social habits, then maybe you don't want to expose yourself to something as big of a surgery because your body won't really recover as well and as effectively. So I think that's sort of like step one. Knowing that no matter what you pick, your life is going to be significantly affected and it's going to be affected for a long time. So, what other context should we be on the lookout for? Because I know you've seen a couple of these clients roll through. So, I'm sure you've been kind of digging a little bit, scouring, answering some questions. Are there other things that people should really consider?
Yeah, I think you mentioned one thing as goals. I think that's the biggest one. Whenever I'm having someone make a decision on a surgery or not a surgery or what they need to do next, it's always risk reward, right? Like, what are you looking to accomplish? What do you want to be able to put your body through? Weighing that versus the two options and what the longer term outcomes are going to be. And I'll just ask you this, Joe, because you brought up age as one of the factors, and that is one of the factors that have popped up in the conversations and why the doctor would steer them in one direction versus the other. When it does come to age, what would you say would be the age where, like an older age, where you would start to lean non-surgical versus surgical?
I'll throw myself in the bucket. Maybe over the age of 35 or 40 is probably where, I'm probably going to steer a little bit more non surgical, but I wouldn't even be surprised if it's younger than that.
Well, what would you say? Like, if you were the doctor and you're going to pick the age?
If I was a doctor picking the
Yeah,
age,
yeah, yeah.
I think age, yes, is obviously a significant variable, but I do think that there's a difference between the age of a 40-year-old who has been active versus a 40-year-old who has, again, flew off a bike, stumbled down some steps, and tore their ACL or their Achilles on a night out versus on the soccer pitch or the basketball court or something like that. So I guess if there was a specific age cutoff, maybe there is a little bit more influence in my tone on pushing someone a certain way because I think that the outcome would be a little bit better suited for them. But it is really hard to know with surgery. So I guess that would be a contextual thing of what 40-year-old am I looking at?
Yeah, that's very fair, because both these doctors both referenced 40 as the cutoff, and I'm like, man, and this is a conversation I literally had with
Sucks
my
for me.
client who I was like, I'm literally 2 years from 40. I couldn't imagine 40 being, 2 years from now, it's being so different that, well, now I'm just not gonna be active anymore. I'm not gonna really be playing golf or going for a run or going on hikes or whatever, and then, I don't need to have an ACL surgery, right? So, to your point, right, it's very dependent on the person and the goal, right? Because I think there is, someone who's 40 who's in poor health, who's never really been active in their entire lives and don't plan on being active thereafter, right? Like, they could, no surgery is probably gonna be the best option for that person. But on the flip side, if you're someone who's very active and you look on continuing to be active and you want to go run marathons, you want to go ski, or you want to go do some things that are going to require your knee to be able to rotate and absorb force, then you know doing the surgery and going through that year process of the recovery makes a whole lot of sense for you because you're going to be able to go right back into doing almost all of those things down the line. So I think that's really kind of the decision, and it just goes back to your goals. What are you looking to do with your body, and based off of that, that should help you kind of push. And, I've talked to both those people and said, most likely with what you like to do, the surgery is going to be the better option for you, because it's going to allow you to, one wanted to go ski again, and one wants to continue to play basketball. And if you want to continue to do those things, right, like making sure that knee is going to be underneath you, and you're not going to have a chance of re-injuring it, and all that stuff down the line because you want to stay active, that's the way to go.
Yeah. And, I think with all this stuff, you probably just want to, what was the standard treatment? So the standard treatment has always been surgery, right? And, off the top of my head, I would probably say that, maybe half of all athletes really get back to their prior competitive level after a lot of these surgeries, feeling like they did, not adjusting their game, showing no signs of slowing down. So it is a little bit of a coin flip just in general. Like, injuries really suck. That's what people have to realize, right? It's bad luck. It happened to you. I know you love basketball. I know you love football, but we have to consider all these other things now in your life that make you you. What was special about football? What was special about basketball? Because again, now if you were thinking of going pro, well, that was a 0.000000002% chance of that happening. This injury may not really have affected that outcome for you because that was going to be hard to attain anyway. But if it's, you like the camaraderie, you like the game planning, you like the speed, you like the excitement, you like being with your friends, or like one of my other clients, I like to run because my best friend likes to run and it's how we bond. Well, I would hope that you can also bond along other things, not just the sport that you guys play together, right? So there is a little bit of that factor going in there too. But knowing that just because you opted for surgery or just because you opted for a cross bracing protocol or a heel lift protocol, you're not guaranteed to get back to where you were. So yes, if you are younger, if you are healthier, then yeah, I'm probably going to say there's no downside really to the surgery as it stands today. What will it mean for you in the long run? Remember, our bodies are not necessarily supposed to be exposed to air and the environment. So even though these environments are sterile and doctors do their best case to make sure everything is clean and there's no germs, the minute you enter an OR room or a hospital, you're at higher risk for infection, right? What happens then? So if you love something so much, it is number one thing in your heart that makes you who you are, then as long as you understand the risks of any treatment you pick, I'm going to support you because it is your decision, not mine. And I think, again, that's where a lot of us as clinicians get all up in arms like, well, I wouldn't do this. I wouldn't do this. It doesn't matter what I would do because it's not my body. So this clinician, this person in front of us understood the risks, understood that, I am willing to play with this outcome if this gives me the best chance for succeed, even if it is slightly better. Then what? They're going to go get a surgery and then they come back and I'm like, well, you know what? I'm not treating you anymore because you disagreed with me. Because guess what? I'm wrong probably way more than I'm right day to day working with people. And accepting uncertainty is really challenging, but we kind of have to learn to do it. So I think that from, you know, that standpoint, are you, let's say, adamant about someone pushing themselves in either direction if they are on the borderline?
No, I think, most people, when I hear them talk about like, hey, like I want to be able to be active, it's because it's a lifestyle thing for them, right? There's an enjoyment about using their body, being outside, doing things, connecting with people, and it's more important than any one particular skiing, basketball, golf, whatever it is, right? So based on like if they tell me all that stuff, then I will educate them. I'll be like, listen, this is what the rehab process looks like. Some people will say like one of them told me was like in 9 months, I'll be back to skiing. I was like, hold on a second here. 9 months, doctors will tell you this, like you'd be back in 9 months, but that is not the typical case. You're gonna be feeling pretty good in 9 months, right? But you're probably not going to be back to full return to activity. And if you also look at ACLs in football, they do pretty well, but not same season. They need over a year to be back to that level. Like if they come back 9 months, which happens, they are not the same. They don't have the same explosiveness. They don't have the same. They don't trust in me as much. The decision making is different. So if someone's pure job is to just prepare and get back to the sport, and they can get back in 9 months, but they're not 100% and their performance suffers. And not until their next season are they back to close to 100%. Well, then you should probably expect it's going to take a little bit longer for yourself because you have a job and you have other life stressors, and it is not your full-time job to do rehab, right? And there's going to
Yeah.
probably be even times in your life where you even just slack on your rehab stuff because you just have other shit in your life that you have to do in its place. So I think expectations really need to be had. That needs to be walked through. They need to know what they're going to be experiencing. They need to know what the other option is and what kind of limitations they're going to have on that end, and then they can process that and make a decision. So I will lean them to like say, hey, listen, if I were you, this is probably the route I'm going to go, but I am not you. So take this information, think about it, figure out what you want. One of them's not having their doctor meeting is not for 2 weeks because of the fracture. They want to see how the swelling comes down and everything, and we look at it. So you have time. You're gonna have like a month before the surgery to think about it, to figure out if you are going to do the surgery. She lives by herself. Are you going to have someone come and help you? But these are all things you need to think about now as you're making the decision, so that it's a scary process for a lot of people. You want to control what you can control now in the decision making process and make plans for that initial month or so that when it comes down to the surgery, you're as prepared as possible and you can kind of navigate those hurdles a little bit easier. So that's how I kind of go through. Is there anything different that you do or any conversation you have differently?
No, I think the expected outcome is always an important conversation too, because you know, to your point, it'll be like, well, Saquon Barkley came back pretty quickly. It's like, well, John, you're a web designer, John. Okay. John, you're 43. Saquon's 25 in the peak of his life, and he plays football for a living, John. Okay, he was squatting 700 pounds before the injury, John. What are you squatting? Right, like 25% of your body weight. I think there's a difference. So I think it's definitely worth, maybe not as aggressively as I just did, framing that out for
Yeah.
people. But yes, that is a very important thing. Everyone wants to accelerate, 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 accelerate. You cannot accelerate healing. You can accelerate function, which is wonderful, but your graft, your
Mhm.
Achilles, your ligament is still only 9 months old,
Mhm.
regardless of if you've been braced or surgically repaired. So it's great you have your quad function back. That's awesome. You are going to probably have a lot less likelihood to be re injured. It's great you can hit your calf raises. You'll have a lot less likelihood to be re injured, but it does not tell me if you are going to be more, let's say, likely than anyone else at 9 months to be in a position where you're going to find yourself torn. But I hit all my return to sport things. I hit this, I hit that, I hit that. Yeah, the tissue we were trying to protect still needed an extra 3, 12, 36 months to fully mature. And I think those are the things we just don't have enough data on is, yeah, I can test your function. I can test your return to sport. I can re-MRI your Achilles. I can re-MRI your ACL, but it doesn't tell me what that tissue can actually sustain before it tears again. And I think that's where, maybe the missing link is. Hopefully we have a test for that. Hopefully we have some sort of way to measure that in the future. But right now, to my understanding, we do not.
I will add two things here, and I don't know if I'll have too much more to say on top of it, but I'll be curious about your thoughts. One is I did come across a research article a while back that looked at a patella tendon graft for an ACL 5 years down the line and found that there was still healing happening. So I always kind of bring that up to people and let them know, like, hey, listen, like if this is still happening, there's some healing happening 5 years down the line, even though you're 100%. Like, imagine what happens 9 months after the surgery, a year after the surgery, how much healing still has to happen if there's still healing going down at the bone level 5 years from now. So that's one. And the other thing I always, like we always compare, like we're just comparing it to athletes, like the highest level. They're N of ones. They're special breeds of human, right? To at least from a performance perspective. I've seen many times a person have the same surgery on one side and then on the other side and have completely different outcomes. Yeah, so I've seen a meniscus one. They did it like, oh, super easy. I had a meniscus on my right knee. I was back on my feet in like weeks and, went super well. I had no issues in the recovery process. So I'm just going to get it done this time on my other side. And then that process is like a 6, 7, 8 month drawn out process. Like, oh my God, what's going on? Like, why is this so much different? And there's so much more stress and anxiety over it. And I had another one, which was a bunion surgery. She did one side. did great. This is like 10, 15, maybe 20 years down the line. She had the other one done. And then with whatever the hardware they put in, she had an allergy to it. So now all of a sudden it was like a systemic process going on that was really crushing her. She had to have all the stuff removed and something else put in. And that took a while for them to even figure out that that process was going on. But so if that also happens, like your life changes as time goes on, right? You're older, there's different stressors, your body's been put under more wear and tear, right? Like just because somebody had a surgery and did something, or you had a previous experience and it went well, it doesn't mean it's going to be the exact same for you a second time around, or when you compare it to your buddy who had the same surgery, right? Everyone is different. Rehab is going to look different. The process is going to be different. It can be easier. It can be harder. You don't know what you're going to get until you're actually in it. And I think people need to be aware of that as part of their decision-making process. But yeah, that's the last bit I have for people.
Yeah, that's it, man. No, that's perfect. And we joked that we should rename the podcast like "What You Want, What You Need." The other one that really crossed my mind is results not guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to think that we are all humans who are imperfect, trying to help other imperfect humans the best we can. And it's just not perfect. It's not guaranteed. So, yeah, your previous outcome doesn't predict your future one. Your friend's outcome doesn't predict yours. It is not fair, but it
Yes,
is the way it is.
that is correct. We are not a machine. We are living, breathing organisms that adapt in very, very different ways. But yeah, man, take us home unless you got something else first.
No, no, no. That's it. No, and that's actually really good. I really like that. That is why the perfect example of why we're not machines, Joe, because results are not guaranteed. We can fix any
There it is.
machine, and my transmission and everything else. The tire I fix is going to be the same result every time. It'll just work. So very good ending, Mr. Gambino. As always, making me and everyone else better. Thank you. I love you. Listeners, we love you. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the Beyond Pain podcast. And remember, you are not a machine.